In this video, I'm going to show you how we can make a black and white digital image. And since this whole book is about trying to obtain the very best quality reasonably possible, I'll be using Adobe Camera Raw to carry out this work. You could of course use Photoshop, but Camera Raw is probably the best place to do this technique. Black and white images have all of their color removed, and so they rely on different qualities of the image to give them their appeal. We're looking at things like texture, shape, and particularly contrast between the different areas of the image to give the appeal. So not all images are best suited to the black and white treatment. Also, black and white photographs rely heavily on our ability to be able to separate the different colored areas within the original scene into totally different brightness densities in the final image. With film, this was done by fitting colored filters to the camera lens. For instance, a red filter would mostly allow red light onto the film, creating brighter areas, but would mostly block the blue and the green types of light to various extents, and that would create a darker area of the image. So this technique increased the contrast between the various parts of the image, exhibiting different colors in the original scene. Now with digital processing, we can apply an infinitely variable range of color filters to our images at the processing stage. And this can be far more effective and creative than having to set in stone by putting a colored filter onto the camera at the taking stage. So from this we can deduce that to produce the best black and white image, digital image, we need to select suitable subject matter for a start, best suited for black and white conversion, and this is a skill that you need to develop and work on yourself. We need to take all our pictures as raw files. We need to take all our pictures in color and ignore any black and white conversion settings on the camera. So we'll begin our journey in Bridge, and I've selected this image. It's not a fantastic image, but it does help illustrate some of the techniques I wish to show you. So that's selected. I'm going to press Ctrl and R to send us to Adobe Camera Raw. Now, as I've already mentioned, different colors within the image, like blue, green, and red. We have a blue, a green, and a kind of red here. If we were to just desaturate, take out all the color information, and we can do that by going to the saturation slider. I'll just drag that to the left. We can see that the brightness value of the blues, the greens, and the kind of reds are almost the same. And so we're getting a very bland kind of interpretation of this black and white conversion. So that isn't the best way of going about doing these things. So, first of all, I believe that this image is just a little bit too bright for a start, so I'm just going to drag the exposure slider just to the left a little bit, watching the histogram. We can come back to these sliders later on after we've carried out most of our black and white conversion treatment. So the thing we need to do is go to the hue, saturation, luminance, and we've got grayscale there as well. And for color conversion, we've got hue, saturation, and luminance, and we've got these sliders down here. But as soon as we go to grayscale, oh, and before I forget, the workflow options here, ProPhoto RGB, 16 bits per channel, so that when we send it to Photoshop, at least it's got all the a nice lot of information when we send it to Photoshop. Right, so back to here, convert to grayscale. We lose these other sliders, and all we got left is a grayscale mix. And you'll notice that the sliders have automatically changed from the central position. Now that is because in our preferences here, we have apply auto grayscale mix when converting to grayscale, and that has been ticked. If it wasn't ticked, then we'd have a straight line of sliders here, but I like to have it usually makes quite a good initial interpretation, so I like to have an auto mix selected. and that's what it's done there. But for this demonstration, I'm just going to select it to default, and that will give us the same kind of rendering as if we'd gone to the basic panel and just drag the saturation to the left, as you can see there. So we'll go back to the hue saturation. There we go. So I'll just go down to here. So we've got a before and after, and we can see our effects. So if we wish to increase the contrast between the different color areas in the image, typically we'd put an orange, a yellow, orange or red filter on a film camera to reduce the brightness of the blue sky. In here we have sliders that do exactly the same thing. So if we wish to reduce the brightness of the blue sky and then make the clouds stand out, all we've got to do is go to the blue slider and drag it to the left. Okay. Looking at our image, we have green grass. So if we wish to make the green grass brighter, go to the greens and slide it to the right. You can see the green grass has got. We have an orange effect here in the paving. So if we wish to make that darker, drag that to the left. Okay, so from this we can see that because we've started off with a color image, we can apply these filters, these color filters, to differentiate the different color densities, the brightness densities within the image. We can continue on doing this to our heart's content, depending on the content, the color content of the image. Now, after we've done all this, got these sliders to where we want them to be, we can go back to the basic panel. Now remember that all these adjustments that we've just been making are based on the color of the original image. Color temperature defines that mix of different colors, and if we drag the color temperature, now at the moment it's 5350 as shot, but if we drag this, that mix of red, green and blues changes, and so it has a terrific effect on the way that blending is applied. Okay, so it's really well worth dragging your temperature and the tint to get totally different effects. If you don't want that, you just go back to as shot, or you could apply a different color temperature. Okay, so you can get a terrific range of different interpretations, and of course we can use the sliders to increase contrast, decrease contrast. I tend not to use the contrast slider. Wish to push a little bit more information into the highlights, drag the highlight slider to the left, shadows to the right, same sort of technique as you use with color. We can change the clipping, so press the Alt key, drag the white slider so it's just clipping on some specular highlights. Same with the blacks, Alt key, so we're getting a nice full tonal range, because black and white really depends on a full tonal range for most of the images. And of course we can drag the clarity slider to either increase or decrease the amount of apparent sharpening within the mid-tone areas. So let's just have a quick look at the before and after. Okay, so that is how this is the best way of changing a color image into a black and white image. And of course then all we've got to do is open the image into Photoshop and carry out any other additional work that we wish to do. So hopefully that's given you a reasonable idea of the best way of converting a color image into a black and white.